Shalom and welcome to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and I've got a question for you. What do you think they're doing with your DNA? You know, that DNA goes into a database, and databases are being hacked all over the world. You're concerned about your identity being the victim of identity theft, but you readily give your DNA to a bunch of total strangers, and that goes into a database. Well, what if that DNA could be used against you? Well, what if there was a way to weaponize someone's DNA? Well, that's not just a fantasy idea, that's a reality. And the weaponization of DNA has been around for over 40 years. But there's a particular DNA marker that Satan is most interested in. That's a Y chromosome marker that determines someone of the Levitical line, the descendants of Aaron, because those are the ones that will have to gather the Sanhedrin with the high priest in the line of Aaron, who will call for the return of Jesus. Can you imagine what Satan would do with a database like that if he could weaponize the DNA and take out that Levitical priesthood? That's what the Codist is all about. All the research is here, all the biblical truth is here in this amazing best-selling biblical thriller available to you right now on Kindle for $2.99. It's the second edition, sold out the first edition, back out with the second edition now, $2.99 special running on Kindle. And also visit our webpage at UnitedNation.com. Scroll to the bottom of the page where it says special offers. Click on the cover of my latest book, The 7 Laws of Abundant Living, Lessons Learned from the Tree of Life. We're going to take you on a journey from the ground all the way out to the fruit. But you click on that book cover, we're going to ask for your email address. We won't send you spam because spam's not kosher, but we will give you the first chapter of this book for free. It's my privilege and pleasure and blessing to introduce you to a second-time guest here on Revealing the Truth, Marlo Schalesky, author of Reaching for Wonder, Encountering Christ When Life Hurts. Marlo is the founder and president of Wonderwood Ranch, a California charitable organization that brings hope through horses to at-risk, gang-impacted homeless and other disadvantaged kids in Monterey County. She is the award-winning author of 11 books, including her latest nonfiction, Reaching for Wonder, Encountering Christ When Life Hurts, as well as Waiting for Wonder, Learning to Live on God's Timeline, Wrestling with Wonder, a transformational journey through the life of Mary, an empty womb, aching heart, hope, and help for those struggling with infertility. You can visit her at Marlo Schalesky, SCHALESKY.com for more information about Marlo and her wonderful work. Well, Marlo, welcome back to Revealing the Truth.
Thanks so much for having me on today.
Well, it's a delight to have you back. It's always wonderful when we get to visit again with an old friend, someone that we've built a relationship with just when we were starting out with the program. We now into, you're probably close to program 1010, maybe 1011, as we continue to press on to bring the truth of the gospel to so many. Your story is so compelling. I want you to take our new audience, many may not remember our first interview, it's there in our YouTube archives, but give us a little background on you, your journey to faith, and some of the trials and tribulations of your personal journey with infertility, and what kind of compelled you to launch this ministry.
Yes, I grew up Catholic and always with a longing for God, but not really an understanding of what it meant to be in a relationship with God until I went to college, and God just overwhelmed my heart with his love. And from that moment, it was a beautiful thing to have a Christ-centric life, to follow him, to find the wonder of God. And I had this idea as a young 19, 20, 21-year-old that, hey, I'm following God, I love Jesus, and now it's going to be easy. Things are going to fall in line. God's going to guide me. This following Christ thing will be going out and ministering, and it all's going to go well, and I'm going to have this family that's going to look like this. I had it all planned out, right? Surely God was going to rubber stamp my plans, you know? I'd have this wonderful husband. We'd have 3 children. Just 3. That was going to be beautiful. The white picket fence, the whole thing. And then no babies came. I did get that wonderful husband, but year after year, month after month, year after year, no, no babies. And I could not understand, how is it that this wonderful couple who only wants to serve God, my husband is a incredible man who loves Jesus too. We've given our hearts and lives to God, and yet there we were, no kids. And people around us having children and who not, you know, even a good idea. They didn't even want kids. But I struggled with the whys. And through that, though, I discovered that why is not the right question at all. It is who. We went through infertility for 20 years. The first 11, no children. And then was able to have some children through intense medical treatment. But in that time, we also had 6 miscarriages. So what I found through all this and all the struggle and the wrestling was that it's all about that who. Who is God in our pain? Who is the God we follow? Who is the God we say we love? Who is the God who says he loves us? That's the real question we have to ask. Why is not important, and it's not even interesting. Most of the time, it won't even be answered. Sometimes we'll figure out why. Like for me, it's like, hey, I have a ministry now, and God has taken that difficult thing and made it into something useful for others. But that's still a kind of a weak why. I don't know why. What I do know is that God, in my pain and in my darkest times, is breathtaking and present and wonderful. When I feel him the least is when he's doing that deepest work in me. So then that's just the beginning of our story.
Marlo, you are my poster child for one of my favorite quotes, which is, God doesn't want us to ask him, how do I get out of this situation? He wants us to ask him, what can I get out of this situation?
Yes.
And
yeah, everything.
You are my poster child for that, because you have gone on a journey. And if you take a look at all of your books about wonder, about this God that we serve, if there's anybody that could be angry and shake a fist at God, it would be you.
You'd think, and I have, that's the thing. It's like, oh goodness, I've been angry. I've beat my fists on his chest. I've said all kinds of things, and you know what? It's all fine. That's how I got where I am now, to this place where I see him in a new way. It's by being upfront and honest and just encountering God and engaging with him no matter how I felt. I didn't pull any punches. And God was fine with that. He almost appreciated it. It's like, because I opened myself up with all the anger I had and the disappointment and the doubts, then he opened himself to me and said, I see you. Will you see me in your pain? And even after we've had children and our infertility journey is now over, it's not like life has all of a sudden gotten great. I have my only son, has type 1 diabetes, and anyone who deals with that disease knows that this is a 24/7 nightmare. It's not something that's ever going to go away. It's an autoimmune disease, destroys the cells in the pancreas, and so we have to monitor his blood sugar every minute of every day. Well, technically every 5 minutes with the technology we have. But it is so hard. I was up last night several times dealing with him. Well, yesterday we lost a horse at the ranch. I mean, It's just, the pain goes, it's not like it goes away. This is what life is. It continues, the hard things come.
You've had seasons. It's Ecclesiastes 1, there's for everything there's a season. A time to laugh and a time to cry, a time to live and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to reap. And you've been through seasons. But in each one of your seasons, you come out of it with more of a, I don't want to call it a childlike wonder, but it really captures me as a childlike wonder. That here's this God that makes himself available to me, and in each one of your trials and each one of your journeys, you went as far as you could on your own, and then you hit that place where you surrendered to this knowledge and wanting to get closer. Not that you were, it wasn't because you were doing things for God, it's because you were doing more with God, not more for God. And in those times and in that transparency, God revealed to you lots of truth. And this new work, Reaching for Wonder, Encountering Christ When Life Hurts, explores not just your story, but the parallels of your story with 14 others who have a similar journey through these trials and tribulations that you have experienced in your life. It kind of makes all of us want to go search out who we identify with in the Bible and what phase of our stage of our life are we in. Are we in the diaspora? Are we in the, or are we in the return? Are we in the, where are we, and who are we now like? Who did we start out as, and who have we become more like in this journey? How did all this come about for you? I know that your concept of wonder and this theme of wonder. How do you define wonder in the sense of your books?
Yes, for me, it's that sense of awe of who God really is. And it harkens back to that feeling you had when you were a kid. Did you, like, blowing a soap bubble and you see the colors and there's this feeling in you of something beautiful and amazing and beyond yourself. It's not connected to circumstances. It's just that breathtaking moment. And sometimes we get it with animals. That's why I love to work with animals. There's this wonder and awe. And we see for some people, it's like they go to Yosemite and they see the beauty of nature. And there is that moment you feel it. And I just believe that is God. That is founded in the very heart of God, that wonder and beauty and breathtakingness that can heal us. We so often think if we just do this, I will have my Bible studies in the morning, I'm going to pray like this, I'm going to do all these things, somehow it'll heal our souls. And I've not found that to be true, although I've tried it. It's like, maybe if I just, follow all the rules. But I couldn't find the fullness of God by following all the rules. I found it by looking for wonder, looking for Him in those places of life where I least expect Him, where I think there's no way God's here because this is so hard. And yet, there's God doing something deep and wondrous. And that has healed my soul. And even now, like, I had a hard day yesterday. It was a heartbreaking day yesterday. And yet, God. And I find that now, because years and years and decades of just practicing, looking for God, where I don't expect Him to be, looking for that wonder, that beauty of His love and His heart, even when it doesn't look like it.
Right.
That matters. It mattered to me yesterday even. It's like, I'm doing better. Little by little, I'm practicing watching for Him and seeing that He's near me.
Your books have been prompted out of tough circumstances. And this one's birthed and had its own birth pains the same way that delivering a child had its own birth pains. What were some of the pains that you were going through that prompted this particular book?
This book, I started thinking about what is it like to encounter Christ in those hurtful places of life? What was it like for these people in the New Testament to encounter Christ? And I no sooner started thinking about this than things in my life and family exploded. My oldest daughter got a stalker, and so he was breaking into our house, and we were just terrified. He threatened to kill my family and all of us. And then we had to go through the painful restraining order process. And this person hid from serving the restraining order, so we couldn't find him, but we knew we needed protection. And it was absolutely terrifying. But God was with us. I tell you, we saw the wonder of God there. And then we were dealing with, again, my son's diabetes, and we had financial crisis in my husband's work at that time. It was everything started to come down around my head in so many ways. I was just starting the ranch, and that was a difficult procedure, coming up against obstacles there, but I knew I wanted to do that. So it was like this book became the book I needed to get through this point in my life. Every single chapter, I'd come to the person in Scripture and that bit of Scripture and say, I need to see what I need. And if I need it, so will my readers. When they're going through times where life hurts, where it's hard, where they don't know the answer, where they don't know what's going to happen, what's going to help me? And it did. And therefore, I have a lot of confidence in this book because I know it can help heal hurting hearts.
When you began to look at the lives of those that we're going to talk about, the leper, the woman at the well, the various encounters that Jesus had, people who were in some kind of crisis, he was always there for the ones who were having the most difficulty, either in their social position, their physical position, their spiritual condition of bankruptcy. You know, people tell you that God won't give you more than you can handle.
Sorry. Forget that.
You know, you've been on your knees and on your face and crippled by the circumstances that you've had to overcome, the challenges, but they keep coming, don't they?
They keep coming. Yeah, it's not like you get over one and that's the one for your life. They will continue to come, and I think that's just because that's what life is. Life is hard. It's not supposed to be easy. I don't know that we would become who we need to be if it was, but that still doesn't make it easy. It's a hard process.
There's breakthrough.
Mm-hmm.
And the blessing is always on the other side of the breakthrough. So if you have no challenges in life, what blessings are you avoiding? What blessings are you not receiving if your blessings are on the other side of breakthrough? I always talk about people coming up against a wall, and you've got to press through that wall, but when you get on the other side of the wall, you're in a room with a wall that's all the way on the other side of it. You've got to navigate all the way to get to that next wall and not curse that wall because your blessing's on the other side of that wall. And it's this journey we go through of my Father's house has many rooms. All right, well, we're having to navigate through all these rooms of life. And you do that so eloquently. So why does God, who loves you so very, very much, why does he allow the betrayals and the financial hardship and the death of a beloved horse and a fight to give birth and then finding out that your son has type 1 diabetes?
Yeah. The why question is one that I have no answer to. I wish I had a simple answer. Why did these terrible things happen to people who love God and are doing their best? And yet they do. They do. And it's not an unusual thing. Peter tells us that. It's like, don't be surprised at what you're suffering. This is what life is. In general, I don't know, but I do know this, that in my life and every life I've seen of anyone who commits to Christ and who commits to finding him even in the difficulties and doesn't just turn back. Every single time, God takes these hardships, these difficult, heartbreaking things, and turns them into something beautiful. They can still be hard, but he brings something beautiful out of them every time. I mean, I think about even the symbol of the cross. You know, that was an execution instrument. Nobody would have worn that as a piece of jewelry. That was to be abhorred. It was the most horrible thing. of their culture. And yet, Christ has changed that horror into a symbol of our hope, redemption, salvation, everything beautiful that we can trust in. And I think that's what he does in our lives. Every single thing that's horrible and hard, he's working on transforming so that we can see him more clearly. And that's what it's all about, seeing him and coming into a deeper relationship with him.
Marlo, we're going to take a short break here, and when we come back, I want you to help me navigate through the book with some of the approach that you took. Take a look at some of the characters of the 14 that you examined, their lives, and kind of address this why question with just the statement that Jesus was asked about the blind man, which one sinned, his mother and father or him? And he said, neither. It's so that God would be glorified. This is all for God to be glorified. How is God glorified in blindness? He was glorified in the healing of the blindness. Blind from birth is a euphemism for born without eyes. So he created eyes for this one. That's, it's a power of God. Only God can create. We can't create. And so when we see that all these things, if we glorify God, and it says that let your light so shine that man would see your good works and bring glory to your Father in heaven. If your light can shine in the darkest hour, then all that darkness can't extinguish your light. Then what power does the darkness have? And I think that's one of the fundamental truths of who you are. And what comes through all of your books is this: listen, I'm now the light of the world, and all the darkness can't extinguish that light. And so I can share my light, and it doesn't diminish my light. And so that's what you do in the pages of your book. Your light gets brighter because you're igniting more lights around the world. We're talking with Marlo Schalesky, author of Reaching for Wonder, Encountering Christ When Life Hurts. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to dig into more of this book when we talk to Marlo. We'll be right back. Shalom. I'm the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, Executive Director of Igniting a Nation and host of the daily TV program Revealing the Truth, seen live every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central Standard Time at www.ianbn.com, and then replayed throughout the day and night via our website. All of our segments can be seen on the Igniting a Nation YouTube channel. Since our launch in January of this year, we've expanded our global reach to over 54 countries with a social media following of over 125,000. Our commitment is to bring you the most in-depth interviews with authors, subject matter experts, and thought leaders from around the world. We have interviewed guests from Israel, Brazil, England, India, and all across North America. All of our authors are featured on the Books and Media page on our website, www.ianbn.com. There you can find a direct link to the book you want to order, and we receive a small commission directly from Amazon. There is no cost to you for this service. In addition to our daily teachings and interviews, we make available to you the archive of all of the interviews on our YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram channels. Our live program is available from our homepage, and there is never a charge to you for any of this access. We made the decision long ago that we would remain a commercial-free resource that would not be influenced by any pressure from any outside company. There are only two ways that we are able to continue to operate this ministry and provide you with the only live 4-hour daily Christian television talk show program. The first is through your support and tax-deductible contributions to Igniting a Nation. These can be made directly through the donate button on the website or sent through the mail to Igniting a Nation, 2700 Corporate Drive, Suite 120, Birmingham, Alabama, 35242. The other way we support the program is by offering you a unique opportunity to have access to over 10 years worth of teachings on a subscription basis. The Teaching Archives contains all of my prior sermons, Torah studies, prophecy in the news videos, and much more for the low subscription price of $5 per month. This subscription grants you unlimited access to over 800 hours of content not available elsewhere and is updated weekly with the most current prophecy classes. In addition to 20 hours of original TV programming each weekday, we invite you to join us live every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday evenings for our Prophecy in the News classes. The times and locations are listed on our events page on the website www.ianbn.com. Every day, you and I are faced with the challenge of where we will go to hear the truth. We are committed to bring you the only program of its kind that covers the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. We cannot do this without your support. Since we launched on January 5th, 2017, we have aired over 300 individual teachings, interviews, and commentaries not available anywhere else. We are now working side by side with almost every major Christian publishing house to bring you the most in-depth feature interviews possible. Our one-hour features address every subject that affects the believer's life. We are hearing of salvations from the Middle East, Africa, and all across the United States. Lives are being changed every day, and we have only just begun. Our mission is to become your trusted resource and grant you access to the people, tools, and information you need to grow in your relationship with the Lord. You can help us by liking us on social media and through your financial support. We know you have many choices in who you support, but we are prayerfully asking you to consider helping us keep revealing the truth, true to our calling, to cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth like no other program available. Donate today and help us bring the message to the four corners of the earth. Visit www.ianbn.com and donate, buy a book, or subscribe to our teaching archives. Without you, we do not exist. Shalom and welcome back to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and we're talking with Marlo Schalesky, author of the newly released book, Reaching for Wonder, Encountering Christ When Life Hurts. Marlo, welcome back to the program.
Thank you.
In this new book, you examine encountering Christ when life hurts. You take us on a journey of 14 specific encounters that Jesus had. Tell me what your thought was and how you studied and how this all came together for you, and take us kind of on a journey with some of the people we're going to meet along the way.
Great. Yeah, I wanted to know what it was like to encounter Christ at the worst times of life. I needed to know that. And so I went to the New Testament and saw, okay, who's at their worst times of life? And okay, what did it look like to encounter Christ? What was the important points that God wanted to get across? What were these encounters like? What can I learn from them for my own life? And so I start each chapter with basically my questions about the story. These are all stories we've probably heard, and we've read them in a certain way for years, and I want to look at them differently. I want to see the things that are there and staring us in the face that we've never seen before. So I start with my questions, and then we do like a biblical imagination section, which a ton of research goes into. It's like, what might have actually been like from that person's point of view, and we tell it in a fictional sort of way. You know, what might have they thought? What did they probably hear? What was the experience like? I'm really hoping that my readers there will walk with these people, these 14 characters in the New Testament, and experience it just like Jesus, experience Jesus like they did.
So you went back and you put them into context. The life and times of what first century Judaism would have been like, what these encounters were, which is so incredibly important because the language, just the vernacular of the time, people forget that there was no New Testament at the time of Jesus.
Right.
It's just kind of a disconnect for them. So you have to understand the geopolitical, you have to understand the social, you have to understand the Jewish life, you have to understand why a Samaritan. You know, what was the issue with the Samaritan? She actually became the first evangelist.
Oh, that was an amazing story when I really got into it. You know, when we talk about that story, we so often focus on living water, worshiping in spirit and in truth, both things that Jesus said. But when I dug deep into that story, it's like, that's not it. That's not the heart of this story. That is not what this story's about. It's about how Jesus takes the deep shame of this woman who she can't even go to the well at the normal time of day. She's going in at noon, at the heat of the day, so she doesn't have to face anybody. And he takes that and makes that very thing into what she uses to witness to the very people that she was trying to avoid. The first thing she says to them is not, come, I've discovered living water, or anything about theology. Says, come see a man who told me everything I ever did, which was the exact thing she did not want them to think about. But here, she's so transformed. Her shame is so transformed that she can use it to bring an entire town to Jesus. They were all converted. They went and saw for themselves, using that thing she most wanted to hide. And I just thought, wow, what if God can do that in me, in all of us, the thing we most want to hide, that we're most ashamed of? What if he could transform that into the thing that brings multitudes to Christ? That's wonder, and that's power. And I want that. I don't want to hide. I don't want to go to the well at noon in the heat of the day with my sorry little water jar. I want to see that kind of deep transformation. So that's just one of the stories, but those are the kinds of things I saw. It's like, wait a minute, this isn't what we thought it was about. This is about something deep and amazing.
Oh, it's about revival.
Yeah.
He stayed 2 more days. People don't look at this story in the context of, first of all, there was a prohibition of a Jewish person talking to a Samaritan because they were half-breeds, so they were neither fish nor fowl in a kind of common day reference. He stayed 2 more days because revival was breaking out with a female evangelist. All right, so the role of a woman, all right, completely transformed the entire city, and it wasn't just a chance encounter. He stayed for 2 more days.
And he went there on purpose and sent off his disciples and waited there by the well for her. So he goes out of his way on purpose, goes to this place to encounter her at the place that symbolizes her shame, the well at noon, so that all of this can happen. And it's a beautiful thing, and he does not avoid the things. I love his straightforwardness in the story. It's not like, oh yeah, well, you've had, no. You've had 5 husbands, and that guy you're with now, not your husband. Right in her face, so it can't be avoided. And that's the God we have. Doesn't let us minimize these things, brings them out so they can be redeemed.
You know, it's truly, she was encountering Jesus when her life hurt. She was covered in shame, and now she becomes a voice of hope.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah.
And
she couldn't have even imagined that before. Clearly that was not the way she wanted her life to go. I'm sure she wanted one husband. But this was disaster upon disaster. And in the book, I even talk about how 3 husbands were acceptable for the rabbis. That was the amount you could have without being completely disgraced. And she doubles that, and that last one doesn't even get the husband moniker. It's like, it's bad for her. And yet, Jesus encounters her, changes everything, not only for her, but for everyone around her.
We see the same pattern in other cases throughout the book. Let's talk about the woman with the issue of blood.
Oh, I love her. Yes, I love her because, 12 years. 12 years of being ostracized. Can't be touched, nothing. Tried everything, used all her money. She's at the end of her rope. And she hears about Jesus. She's got one last shot. It's a long shot. And she wants one thing, to be healed. So out she goes, big risk, weeding through that big crowd of people who she's not supposed to touch anybody. They're not supposed to touch her. And what I love about her is all she wants is the edge of his robe, right? Just that little touch, teeny touch of a prayer shawl. That's it. So sneak, 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 tiny little touch, and she's completely healed and fades back into the crowd. And you would think that's where the story should end, and it doesn't. I mean, she's now got everything she came for, everything she wanted. It should be done, and no. Jesus does this amazing thing, and I think this is the heart of the story. He stops that entire crowd, and they complain about it. Everyone's like, oh, what do you mean? Everyone's touching you, blah, blah. But it's like he has to look her in the face. He stops the world so that he can find this one, look her in the face, and say, take heart, daughter. That's our God. We are after healing. When we're in this pain and it's been so long and we're at the end of our rope and we have no other hope, all we want is to be healed, and God wants more. Healing is not the point. The point is this Jesus stopping the world to look in our face and say, take heart, daughter, take heart, son. And he will not settle for anything less. We will. Like, just fix the circumstances, God. But Jesus, he insists on this encounter. And that's what I learned through all the stories. It's like Jesus is all about the encounter. The most surprising thing in this book is that all these stories are not about the healing. We think of it as, oh, she healed, the healed woman, this one, that one, demon-possessed guy. And it's not about that. It's about that face-to-face encounter every time for Jesus. Looking someone in the face. Even when he heals from a distance, it's about looking someone in the face, encountering them understanding a little more of who he is.
When you talk about that face-to-face encounter with Jesus, I'm always reminding people that when you're in sin, you're walking away from the Lord. He can only see the back of your head. He can't see you face-to-face. You have to stop your sin and turn around. That's what repentance is. And so in order to have a face-to-face encounter, it takes you all the way back to the question to Adam, where are you?
Where are you?
Yeah,
yes.
Adam, where are you?
And all of these people had to encounter. And a lot of my chapters, it's like, that's the question. Will you, in your pain, encounter Christ, or will you walk away? In fact, one of the stories in here is about the guy who did walk away. He got healed, but he refused to change, and he refused to see Christ. He was the guy by the pool who was crippled for like 35 years, forever, but long enough for him to get used to his pain, and I think he kind of relied on it. And Jesus heals him, but he is not transformed. So he misses the main thing. And we have to be willing to look Jesus in the face, metaphorically, and encounter who he really is in our pain. We walk away, we continue in sin even, like that guy did. You miss everything. You miss the whole point of the story and your story. And it's a sad thing.
The world says we need to have this relationship with Jesus. But before you can have a relationship, you have to have an encounter. You have to meet. Yeah. I can't have a relationship with you until I meet you. These online, dating services and all these things. You can't really have a relationship until you meet somebody. That's where it begins. So you have to have this encounter with Jesus. Most of the time, you reach out or you become more open for an encounter when life does hurt. You find more people talking about, when we look at the the scriptures that we're overcomers by the word of our testimony and the blood of the Lamb. The word of our testimony is in the difficult times, when I turned to God, He was there. Right? And because I grabbed a hold of the hem of His garment, I just didn't touch it. I grabbed a hold of it till He drug me along and drug me through to the other side of this pit of despair that I was in. That's the only way I survived it. Who did you personally identify with most in these characters?
My favorite guy, and besides Jesus in the entire New Testament, is blind Bartimaeus. I love this guy. His heart calls to me because there he is, sitting on the side of the road. He's blind. He's trying to collect his money, and he gets this. There's a hint of Jesus on the road in front of him in a crowd. Just a hint. And he does everything he can to encounter Jesus. He jumps up. He's discouraged. Don't bother the teacher, they all say. Nope. He's going to do whatever it takes. Throw his cloak. He throws it away, and that's what he catches his money in. He doesn't need that. And he rushes to Jesus. He's blind. How does he even get there? We don't know, but he's going to make it. And then Jesus says, what do you want me to do for you? And I love this question. It's so simple. And it's not the first time Jesus has asked this sort of thing. He, in fact, asked the same sort of thing to the man who was 35 years crippled. But that man did not ever answer it. But Bartimaeus knows what he wants. And what he wants is, I want to see. And Jesus heals him, and the first thing he sees is the face of Christ. That's what I want in my life. I want that enthusiasm. I want to throw off my cloak. I want to run and have Jesus say, what do you want? And I just want to see. It's not even like, I want all this. I want everything to be perfect. Not anymore. I want to see him wherever he's active. I talk about like the ranch. We opened this charity ranch. I didn't do it so much because I love kids, although I do. I did it to see Jesus because that's where he's at work. I just want to join him. I just want to see him. So blind Bartimaeus speaks to me in all circumstances because his life was terrible. And yet you see not a hint of that in his reaction. All you see is this enthusiasm to get to Jesus, to see everything, and to encounter truth and beauty.
Which is so different than the 10 lepers that he healed.
Oh, those guys. Yeah. One comes back, the others are, really? Although, to be honest, the guy by the pool I was madder at. I'm just like, you're just a terrible person. But you can let bitterness in your circumstances ruin you to an encounter with Christ. You can encounter him and get nothing because you've allowed that bitterness to creep in. Yeah,
as you describe that, I'm thinking about the rich man who came to Jesus and said, I've done all this. And he said, well, that's great, you've done all this, but now you have to do the one last thing. Yeah. And that's take all your wealth and give it all away.
Yeah, my next book it will be similar to this one. We're going to be talking about the wealth of wonder, living in not in a poverty mindset with God. And the rich young ruler, I think he is the saddest story in the entire New Testament because he was given the call of all the other disciples to come and be close, and he walks away. Mm-hmm. Breaks my heart to read his story. He had all this. We don't even know his name. We know Peter, John, Andrew. We don't even know. He missed the greatest opportunity. Wouldn't have you liked to walk with Christ when he was in his human form? And this guy gets that opportunity and walks away. No. Don't walk away when God is calling.
Who was the most surprising?
Most surprising character.
Most surprising character for you.
That is a great question. Let me think for 1 second about that because so many surprised me. Do I want to talk about the Syrophoenician mother? She's, who banters with Christ. Do I want to talk about the woman at the gate with a dead son? Although, I do like the guy with the demon-possessed son who, helped my unbelief and all that.
Right.
But I think what I like best is perhaps the guy with the Legion of Demons. He amazed me because he had a legion of voices in his head, all tearing him to pieces. And he sees Jesus come to the shore and somehow makes it to Jesus. How do you do that with all those voices screaming in your head, tearing everything apart inside you? And yet somehow he gets there and falls at Jesus' feet, even with all those voices spewing out hatred. And Jesus is able to cleanse him of the voices in his head. And so he can sit and hear his own voice for a change and the voice of Christ. That I relate to too. How many times do we have those voices in our heads, things that are, going on up here that are telling us we're no good, we're useless, we can't do this, God is mean, God won't help you. All the things that we could be being told and that make a ruckus, and we can't even operate as a human being anymore because of the lies that we're absorbing. And yet, if we can just somehow get to Jesus, he could, so can we. Find the stranger on the shore, fall at his feet. That's all he has to do. And I think, read that again 100 times. I've read that story, and yet it never gripped me like that. Say, wow, he should have been running the other way. And yet he makes it there. And that is all we have to do. It's like, just encounter Jesus. And like you were saying before, just turn, make your way there any way you can, because the wonder and power of God will do the rest.
The message is so consistent, Marlo, from the time that God had given Adam the opportunity to repent, Eve the opportunity to repent. Cain, he tells him, sin is crouching at your door. If you don't master it, it will overtake you. If you do good, will that not be accepted? I mean, God's been giving us this message all along, and then he brings Jesus to the earth for us to encounter the living Word of God, who now is still bringing the same message, because I and the Father are one. I only say what I heard my Father say. I only do what I saw my Father do. And the ones that truly recognized him as Messiah, as Deliverer, as Prince of Peace, as Mighty One, the ones who believed in that he was God incarnate, that a touch, a word, a glance, even a rebuke was something that was going to be life-changing. And we've minimized these stories that you have now maximized. You brought them back into their perspective, which when you do things in context, you tend to do, because the story and the setting make it so marvelous and so miraculous.
It's rich. Yeah, it's so rich. When you see it all and you really walk with them, what would have been like? And it's like all this beauty comes out that we don't see with a cursory reading.
All right, just real quick, tell me, because we only have about 3 minutes left in this segment, about the ranch.
Oh, the ranch is wonderful. About 2 years ago, I have horses. We started this charity ranch because I live in a very gang-impacted, high-violence, poverty-stricken area of California. We have shootings all the time. In fact, one of the groups of kids that came out to my ranch, we bring out all kinds of at-risk. We really focus on the gang-impacted, the ones from high-violence neighborhoods, low income, needy kids who would never ever be able to experience horses, donkeys, archery. Ah, so fun. Bunnies we have, and chickens and pigs, and you name it. And they all come out and they ride horses, they do archery. It's wonderful. But where was I going with this? I got excited. But oh yes, I remember. One of the groups that came out, they're from a very high violence area. And these kids told me in February that they could not go outside to play anymore because there'd already in that calendar year been too many shootings. So they had to stay in their tiny little apartment and they don't live just their own family. Here we have several families will be shoved into one tiny little apartment. So they came out and they ran and they rode horses and they rode the Pioneer, and they were kids. And that's the main thing of our ranch, is to look kids in the face, tell them they're valued, treat them like they're beautiful, show them a little wonder of God in these animals, in nature, and everything else. We love that, and that's why we do what we do. It's because I really, really, really believe in this wonder thing. I believe it for the kid who had his friend die in his arms from a gang shooting. I believe it for the kid who's blind and deaf, who was out like a week ago. You know, all these kids, I believe it for the ones who are living out of a car or a garage or on the street or in the shelter. That if you can tap into wonder, if you can see a little bit of the beauty, it can heal the soul in the worst of circumstances. And that's what God offers us, and that's what we offer here at Wonderwood Ranch.
Well, we're so excited for your work for this new book. You can find out more at vividgod.com. You can follow Marlo at Marlo Schalesky on Facebook or Twitter at Marlo Schalesky. The book is Reaching for Wonder, Encountering Christ When Life Hurts. Author Marlo Schalesky and friend of Revealing the Truth. What a delight it was to catch back up with you, and I can't wait for the next book to come out, and we'll have you back on to talk about it. And we just pray blessings over all the works of your hand, and thank you for the marvelous work that you're doing for the kingdom.
Thank you so much.
So great to see you again. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll bring you the next edition of Revealing the Truth.